There's a bacterial disease that can be a big problem on not only woody plants but herbaceous plants as well. And it's a disease we call crown gall. And it's called crown gall because it attacks right at the crown or at the soil line or sometimes slightly below the soil line. The bacterium that's involved is one called Agrobacterium tumefaciens. And in actuality, it's not the bacterium that causes the gall to form. There's a little entity inside the gall inside the bacterial cell called a plasmid that has its own genetic material. And when the bacterium gets in the plant, the genetic material from the plasmid gets transferred and hooks itself into the genetic material of the plant and directs the plant to form an abnormal number of cells, and you get a gall forming on the plant. Now here on this low-growing euonymus, we have some crown gall. These are the typical crown gall symptoms. Here we have a younger gall. It's kind of cauliflowery in texture and in feel, but as it ages, it will become a darker brown, such as we have here. This gall is probably no longer active, whereas this one is still growing. Here's a gall that didn't get very big, but you can see on this particular gall that it's really on one side of the branch. And you could actually snap that right off or take that branch right off. But if you just broke the gall off, that won't cure the disease in this case. The gall will continue to form. As it does so, as we see on this branch, it surrounded the branch and crushed the vascular tissue, and so this part of the branch died. Whereas here, this part isn't crushed yet, and it's still growing. Now, the bacterium usually comes on the plant, already infected. And then that's probably what happened in this bed. These euonymus were already infected coming from the nursery or landscape location where it was produced. And then it was planted in this bed. Now, the gall will continue to develop, and then as it dies, bits of it will break off and fall to the soil. Most bacteria do not survive well in the soil at all, but Agrobacterium tumefaciens does. It will stay in the soil for years. And so once an area is infested with the bacterium, about the only thing that you can plant and consistently not get crown gall is grass, because almost any other herbaceous plant, a dicotyledonous type plant, whether it's woody or herbaceous, will get this particular disease. Now, once it's in a bed like this, about all you can do is prune out the affected branches and get rid of them. And if you prune back a few inches, you really don't have to worry about the spreading the gall. But you probably should disinfect your pruning shears by putting them in 10% chlorine bleach or 70% alcohol for at least 10 minutes in between your pruning cuts. The problem here is that if you wanted to plant something else in this bed, you probably have the crown gall bacterium in the soil, and anything else put in will probably contract the crown gall. And so there really isn't anything that can be done. If you wanted to keep these plants here, the thing to do would be to prune out the major galls and then just water and fertilize as you normally would care for the plant and just let them grow on. You can see the rest of the bed looks pretty good, even though there is crown gall here. One of the controls that can be used in plants that are grafted, things like roses that are susceptible, is to, instead of grafting close to the soil line, use bud grafts well away from the soil line. So the closer you get to the soil, the closer you get to the source of the crown gall bacterium. So bud grafting will get away from that. Another thing that can be done is on plants that are susceptible and you're producing them for nursery production, they can be dipped in a bacterial suspension of a bacterium called Agrobacterium radiobacter. Now, Agrobacterium radiobacter is related to the crown gall bacterium, but it competes with it, and it's not a pathogen, but it will compete with the crown gall bacterium and prevent it from getting in. Now, one of the problems that has developed over the years with Agrobacterium radiobacter is that it turns out that there are some crown gall bacteria that are resistant to radiobacter. But that is one control that could be used on plants that are highly susceptible and you're producing them in a nursery. You probably wouldn't use it in the landscape site because eventually the radiobacter will die out, and if the crown gall is present, you will get infection. But there are no fungicides or bactericides or anything that will protect the plant from crown gall.